So we were talking about the mini expansion. It seemed like for out of the three of us, we generally like the expansion, just not the way that it was executed and how it's just so expensive to actually get all the cards, especially since in another month we're going to have a bigger expansion that really it's taxing your gold. You're going to want to spend your gold, your dust, and your vials on the new expansion, not this mini expansion. And
But
Yeah, if you
Mhm.
even though it taxes your gold and your vials, especially your gold, when you uh, put more cards inside the set, how do you expect to open those certain cards? The possibilities are not in your favor.
0.02%, I believe. It's the percentage of getting a single legendary, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 0.02%, but I could be wrong. A specific one.
I
So it's very hard.
I think this expansion would have really been better off if like the mini expansion would have been better off if you were able to just purchase the mini expansion as its own standalone pack, or if these cards were golds and silvers. Just because the
That
price of
would
a
work.
legendary is so high.
Yeah. I like the idea of like Dawnbreak Night Edge point 2 or 2.0 and just like make it more expensive and only pull like 4 cards out of the 16, so you add the RNG element, because you're also a company, you also want to make money, you want people to spend real money on it. But this way it just feels like it's kind of cheap. It's like you're selling a product that is not new. It's like you're selling a second-handed computer to someone, and with the possibility of having a new computer.
The,
It's like it just doesn't feel right.
it's like DLC in an expansion, is how it
Yeah,
feels.
exactly. You have the chance to get this cool new loot or equipment, or you can just get the old one. And yeah, the ones you've been playing with for months now.
Like what happened with me.
Yeah, that was me. I pulled the Rooney after crafting 3 Roonies because the meta asked me to have Rooney. So
I
Yeah,
think I opened
mhm.
only one Dario.
I opened up two Dark Feast bats after I had crafted my other two Dark Feast bats yesterday.
yeah, it's like all the people that I talk with was like that. They're like, I pulled an old legendary. I was sad. I was hoping I get a new card, but oh well.
I think I opened up
But that's
like
what you're expected to do. The possibilities are not.
Yeah, because you're not gonna spend
You.
like you're not gonna buy 200 packs just to get a
Yeah, I
card you can
used
spend
about
vials on.
1,000 gold, and that's it.
Yeah,
No way.
I think I spent like 30. I opened up like 30 packs, and I just got one legendary from the new mini expansion.
which is expected. That is what normally happens when you buy 30 packs for a new expansion. You're set to have like 3 or 4 legendaries or 5, but to get the new ones, it's like one out of what 20s, but 20 maybe more. So yeah.
So other than other than the mini expansion and such, we also have um the Shadowverse Open. It's coming to not an end, but we're moving on to the next stage of the Shadowverse Open. So we're going to be jumping into like the top eight. So the top eight is going to be this. I have it on the screen for everyone. Out of the Pan American side, top three players are Disastrous Omega, Gengar, and Fantasy, both from CPV. In EU, we have Zero Fine, our very own Zero Fine, and then Disastra's Essia and Sheepy. And then for SEAO, it's Mausama from Team Revelation, Styx from Voidless Summoners, and Disastrous Goms. So Disastrous tearing things up, man. They've got four people, right? Four people in the top three of each region, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's also interesting that up to recently they have never had like a big winning, right? You always saw them on the top. You always saw them top 3, top 4, top 6 on previous seasons. Like we saw on the American side, we saw them on the EU side, Essie and Sheepy mainly, and now you see them winning. We saw them winning SVOs, taking SVO wins, weekly wins, and also last season we saw Imari and DV8 actually taking the whole tournament. That was what I was expecting to see from Disastra, because they were always missing. To me, they were like the second, very consistent, but never like the leading pack. But now they came up really strong this season, and they're threatening to win again. And since we have Zero Fine here, I would like to ask him, who are you looking up to? Who do you think is a very, very favorite to win it all? Aside from you, of course.
I think that CP, the favored one. I think
Yeah,
that in the end he will make it. He will. He may be finishing second in a lot of tournaments, but in the end, I think that he will win something, and that will be really big.
yeah, he
It
deserves
will
it.
make
Like
an impact.
he
Yeah,
has
of
been
course.
second place
Yes.
so many times. I feel bad for him, and it's quite remarkable when you think about it. Just making it to the finals so many times. It's not an easy accomplishment to do. I myself have not been able to do it. I've been in a couple of finals, but I can't do it now, and he's just consistently there. I remember him from season 1, season 2, season 3, and now it's season 4, and he's still doing it. DreamHack, we saw him get to the finals once again. Now we see him get to the top 8. Not only that, we have to bear in mind that in the Europe side, everything's very set up to have the 4 slots for the World Grand Prix. I mean, there's still a lot of points to fight for. Like the EU side has very, very strong leaders so far.
Ever since I basically joined like the Shadowverse community, I've seen Sheepy's name just forever. He used to be Onion Sheep. You guys remember that? What before
Yeah,
he actually
exactly.
became Sheepy?
Yeah.
Like, and he was back when he was Onion Sheep. His name was you would see his name quite often. So I'm glad to see that he's finally like he's getting there. He's getting the attention he deserves.
Yeah, I am pretty new to the competitive scene, so I don't know about the past, but I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure that should be the case.
Hmm.
Uh, I I I was pretty sure that CP would win the dream hack, and he was so close. He was so close.
Close.
It was such an unfortunate series. The last match, the possibilities of having the exact same draws,
Yeah.
and then going second, his
It
opponent
it
having the pass while he didn't.
Yeah, exactly. He came up to that was insane. He came up to the second vault. Actually, they both had a first
Yeah,
vault. They both had the first vault. They both picked the blade, the dark blade. But then his opponent drew the second vault, and that was just game breaking. Yeah,
yeah. There
just
was a
intense,
point that the
intense.
game was leaning towards CP. I was pretty sure that that's it at
Exactly.
last, but it just got away.
Mhm.
It only needs one card,
So
but he will eventually get there. I'm pretty sure. But
I also want to talk about the overall point standings just for the year. So I'll bring those up on the screen too. So these are the standings for everyone trying to get into the final qualifiers, right? So
Yes, the World Grand Prix qualifiers. The 4 slots we see here are the qualifying slots for the Contenders Cup. There's 4 slots for the yearly standings that will take you to LA.
so on Pan America, top four is Disastrous Crumpson, Trickster, CPV Fantasy, and Manasurge Sky Sama. In Europe, we have Zero Fine at first place. We have Sheepy in second, Ludabrolo in third. Ludabrolo and Sheepy both Disastra. And also Disastra's Essia is in fourth. So Disastra has second, third, and fourth of Europe and first in Pan America, which is really impressive. And then in Southeast Asian Open, we have first place is BMA, second place is Revelations Glow, third is Revelations Mausama, and fourth is Disastrous Goms. So what blows my mind about these overall standings is that if you look at Europe, the person in last place has just as many points as the person in first in America and is crushing the person who's in first in Southeast Asia. Why do you think that is?
Well, the Southeast Asia is easy to explain just because they have less
Mm-hmm.
opportunities to gather points. They have less weeks to play in. I believe it's only 3 or 4, maybe 3. So that's explainable. But for the EU side, I think it's because I'm gonna sound biased because it's EU, but I think we have like the best players in the world are EU. But I honestly believe that, not only because I play against them every week, but also see the stream and I see the quality of plays. I was on the DreamHack and I saw very like next level plays, and NA also has a bigger pool, which means the points are spread or thin, and those are the main reasons I think.
I think that's pretty reasonable. Um, I think I don't think it makes my head hurt to be completely honest. But let's get into. I think we've been beating the news a bit to the ground. So let's jump into a little interview with Mr. Zero Fine.
Who am I?
So I love that. I love that clip. So Mr. Zero Fine, we have some questions for you. So first things first is Zero Fine, who are you and what do you do in real life?
Who am I? Who am I? Okay, so I live in Greece, as you may know already. I'm 25 years old and I study microbiology. Apart from that, I am the common everyday person that you meet on the street. Uh, I do everyday stuff, nothing special, I could say, except for when I come back into my house and open the Shadowverse and transform into a Weebo. But apart from that, uh, I can say that
What's
I
what's
have
your
any
favorite
special features.
What's your favorite hobby outside of Shadowverse?
My favorite?
Mhm.
Hobby outside
Mm,
of Shadowverse. Do you do something in real life to spend time outside of Shadowverse?
I like listening to a lot. And when I'm outside the house, I like hanging out with friends.
Can you do a
Uh,
backflip?
no,
You can't do a backflip. I can't either.
I wish I could.
So what's your favorite class in
But
Shadowverse?
it's Havencraft.
Haven, really?
Since I was a Yu-Gi-Oh player before, and I always had a love for the dark and light archetypes. So in Shadowverse, I also like Havencraft and Shadow the most, and then Dragon, and then Blood. But yeah, I like the role playing with all the whole light and darkness theme and
Yeah, and Eris
all this
has that
kind of
kind
stuff.
of theme going on with her too, because you have the good Eris and the bad Eris.
Yeah.
And I like that this is the only class that has it has light and dark counterparts, like Dark Jean. There's also Dark Alice in Shadowcraft, but yeah, Shadow is already dark, therefore.
Yeah, there's also the false religion sub team, right? All the weird gods, the evil gods of Avon, and then you have like beautiful cards like Alexiel and Aegis, the literally the guardian, the shield. Yeah,
And I honestly think they should make more dark counterparts in Havencraft.
I think it would make sense, and I think like you were saying earlier, how there's like Dark Alice in Shadow. There's also the Black Swan and the White Swan, and I think those two cards have like those two classes have a nice duality going on for them, and I think there's like more space to be played with there. So, in your time playing in the Shadowverse Open, do you have any particular story or moment that stands out in your mind as like this was a good thing, this was a fun story?
Not exactly. There's one time on the very first Open I joined in January. I was up against Annabelle, and he was crushing me. I had 0 cards on the board, 0 cards on the field, like nothing. I was playing Dirt Rune, and I don't remember what I was playing. But I top deck an Oz.
That's where it always starts,
and,
right?
and I won from nothing, literally from nothing. And he was the ultra good guy saying, "Oh, what was that top deck? I got wrecked and this stuff." Apart from that, maybe our continuous battles with Master, fist
He
fights,
says that because
the Western battles.
he says that because he wins them. He wins most of them. I've only been able to consistently beat him on take two, and that's it. I'm 3-0, 3-1 in rotation, and 1-0 on take two. So I got that one going. Let's go, boys.
So overall, you guys are tied then, right? Three,
No, is 3-2 now.
3-2,
now.
3-2.
This weekend, 3-2.
So Zerofine, if you could design a single card in Shadowverse, what would it be, and why is it Wood of Brambles?
Do you want me to say my usual phrase about with the brambles?
It's try to make it try to make it a little clean for the camera. Try to make
Okay, I hate with the brambles. I cannot say the F word. I can't say the F word. That would not be polite. Wood of Brambles, I think it has an interesting design overall, but since they want to promote the game in a board-centric style, they should be more careful about printing those cheap cards like Wood of Brambles or Acceleratum, all this stuff, especially if you can bounce them back, or have cards like Deus Ex that will make pretty much sure that you're gonna draw on them. And certain classes just can't do anything. It's like the matchup is already over since tier one. I'm not saying that, for instance, Portalcraft cannot has 0% chance against Forest, but in a sample of 20 games, how many games will Portalcraft win?
And-
2, 3?
And how many of
Yeah.
those games did they win? Was it because the Forest only played one Brambles or didn't have the
Yeah.
Brambles in time?
Yeah.
To me, Brambles kind of reminds me of another card in Shadow, Ceres. The cards they're clearly different cards, but to me, Ceres is the kind of card that, like, once you get to that stage of the game, so there are just quite a few decks that just flat out can't answer the card, and just like it just takes over the game. They're just difficult. They really punish certain statted followers and such.
Yeah, it's like cards like Wood of Brambles and the Ceres, especially Brambles, do not only work. They have, how should I say it? They have a dual face. I mean, they work both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, but flexible, very flexible.
Yeah. What triggers me the most is the fact that you can play. You may have 3 copies in your deck, but you might actually play. Let's say if you're playing Polas and they're bound barrages, you might play 9 copies of it.
Yeah, yeah. I remember at DreamHack, we were watching a game, and the player chose not to replace Brambles or bounce it, I remember. And I turned back to the French crowd, and I'm like, if you play this matchup, if you can play 10 Brambles, you play 10 Brambles. If it's turn 10, you play Brambles. Or turn 9, actually. I think it was turn 9 or turn 8. You play Brambles because your Jungle Wardens, your Elephants, your everything just becomes 10 times harder to clear for. If you play double jungle warden after having a brambles, it's like almost impossible unless they have like a Magna Legacy. But then you can play like elephant or another jungle warden, and it's just like a nightmare for them to deal with. So
It's funny too because when Brambles first came out, the community didn't really think too much of it. It was a pretty innocuous card, but then as time went
I
on, the
didn't
card just got like it got better and better and better. I think
I
part of
didn't
that's
like it. Yeah.
because part of that I think is because just like a card like Airbound Barrage got printed because you didn't really want a Nature's Guidance here Wood of Brambles, but Airbound Barrage in your Wood of Brambles is quite a bit better.
Yeah, you also didn't want to barrage your water fairy or your fairy or right
Hmm.
or your but brambles is just it's a countdown effect. So you enhance you are incentivized to actually bounce it and replay it.
It gives you more fairies too. So if you could buff one card, nerf one card, and then bring another card to rotation zero fine, what would it be?
Buff one card. I think I would buff Hector. What do I mean, though? Because people will hate me about it. I think that his necromancy effect could have been 6. Then I would nerf maybe chromatic do lol acceleradium, and I would bring back Bahamut.
Bahamut.
Hmm.
I was really expecting you to say you wanted to nerf Brambles. That's where I thought this was going.
I was expecting him to say bring back Lucifer.
That's what I was
Where's
thinking.
your
Yeah.
where's your love? Where's your Lucifer guy?
Yeah, I think I want him back, but I don't think that he would be playable now.
To be fair, without
maybe
Saakwill,
Ginger,
yeah.
but even
Without Saakwill, it makes it a lot
you'll never
harder
have the time
to.
to play him.
Yeah, true.
Never have. He's pretty much like an Alexiel now.
Compared to like a lot of the other cards you could be playing in that play point slot, he's kind of understated nowadays. I think earlier on in the game he was much more reasonable than he is now. So I know you used to play quite a bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zero Fine. So
15 years.
that's quite a while.
Wow.
So what's your favorite archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! And why aren't Ghost Tricks playable?
Okay, there's only one word for Ghost Tricks. They're trash. Believe me, there's no other word. I can't explain in any other way. As for my favorite archetype, there were 3, but I have leaned towards Shadows.
Shadow.
They were about a form of puppets of already existed monsters that got possessed by some sort of dark power, and then they were used. They made fusions using cards from your deck,
Hmm.
and each fusion had an elemental aspect. It was one for fire, one for light, one for dark, one for earth, wind, and water. And they were incredibly versatile.
Reminds me of Gladiator Beasts. That's one I like because you can keep fusioning things depending on your game plan. I like that style of I'm creating my own game plan, my own win condition. So
When
Yeah,
I,
flexibility.
the point with Shadows was that it punished your opponent for using his extra deck, using his synchros, his fusions, and all this. Since every Shadow monster would trigger an effect when they would send to the graveyard by a card effect, and their fusion spell would send them directly from the deck to the graveyard as the materials to bring the fusion, and therefore, because it was through an effect, you would gain extra effects like draw cards, destroy cards,
Nice.
and all this stuff. Unfair, completely unfair. And whenever one of those fusions was sent to the graveyard, you could choose one of the fusion spells in the graveyard and take it back to your hand. So it was a never-ending cycle.
Yeah. Actually, okay. The real question people want to know though, like I'm gonna take away Zero's post now, and I'm gonna ask the real questions. All right. If you could share a bed with someone at DreamHack, who would you share it with and why? This is what the people want to know, Cesaro.
This is what Twitch chat needs to know.
I don't really have a preference. When I want to sleep, I need complete silence. In the sense that if someone uh, is snoring, I, I can't sleep. I will never be able to sleep. So I
Got
would
it.
prefer to be with someone who doesn't snore. Other than that, I don't have any
Got it.
preferences.
Taking notes.
That's a really solid answer to that question. I was wondering how you were going to go about that one.
All right. Second question. If you won the World Grand Prix, what would you use the money on, and why would it be to make Ghost Streaks playable again?
Again, they will never
Again.
win. They never win. Yeah.
Why would you spend money on designing good Ghost? No, I'm kidding. What would you spend the money on?
No, I think I'm done with Yu-Gi-Oh. I wouldn't return to the game. I think I would use the money, maybe go to another country. Don't know. I'm leaning to
Interesting.
America.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's it.
I was gonna remind us that Essia also answered in the same manner that you would like to travel.
Mhm.
So very interesting to see that we all
I,
like traveling. And
no, I meant that I would live permanently. I would,
Got it.
just out.
yeah,
just leave
yeah,
in a different country. Got it. Got it.
yeah. Maybe America or Australia. I don't know.
Hey man, you want to go to
Maybe
America?
America.
Maybe we can get the
Maybe
HSK house started.
Yay! If you win $1 million,
smart,
that's
smart.
that's a fine house. That's a fine house you can get in America if you win $1 million. So, but before that, there's someone you need to beat at the final stage. Who would you like to face at the finals of the World Grand Prix, and why?
I believe that there should be a feature where your final opponent should be the previous world champion.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I mean, once the whole World Grand Prix is settled, then the final boss should be the world champion, like the Pokemon League,
To see who
Yeah,
wins the belt.
exactly.
where you face the champion
Yeah, the belt.
in
Yeah,
the end.
like wrestling or boxing. Yeah.
Mhm.
Other than that, I don't know. Maybe Shippy.
Yeah, that would be my answer would be either
He's a
Zero
very
Fine or
tough
Sheep.
opponent.
Yeah, yeah.
When I played against him, it was one of the best series I had. He would push me to the limits of thinking.
Sheepy was my first real opponent on the group stage too. It was my first opponent on the group stage. It was Onion Sheep too, and I still remember that game as if it was today. It was what I like to call my first ever competitive game because it was at the big stage. So
Everyone before him was just another target, just another number.
before we qualified, we were both mostly randoms playing the game for fun, and I just made it through.
Mhm.
So.
All right, so I think that's going to conclude our interview section with Zero Fine. Unless anyone in Twitch chat or anybody has any questions, I think I myself am good. Do you have any other questions, Akko, for Zero?
No, I'm fine. I got the bet question out of the way, so
That's the
I'm
important
fine.
one. I think we're good. So we're going to move into our Clash in the Name of Glory.
Clash in the name of glory.
I love it. Every time.
My boy Arthur.
So this is a segment that we did last week, or not last week, 2 weeks ago. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this segment, so how this is going to work is we have two players. This week, the players will be Zero Fine and Akamaru. Each player will have 2 minutes to pose their side of an argument. And then Twitch chat or myself or a combination of the two will choose at the end who had the better argument for each topic. So we're going to start this one off. I'm going to let Zero Fine answer the first question. So the question is, Nerfs versus no nerfs. What do you think? And you can start.
Uh, that's tough because my experience from Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't let me accept the fact that cards are getting changed. I am more of the guy that think that cards should be restricted. We should have something like a restriction list. Uh, this with this, I think modes like the unlimited would evolve, would be pushed a step further. Because you see, whenever we go to unlimited, we see the same decks over and over: Roach Deceived, Roach Deceived, Vengeance Blood, Atomy, and all the stuff over and over again. Therefore, when you have such a large card pool and expansions getting released, really the one really close to each other, uh, I think that you should expand your horizons to this card pool. Don't just let 50 or 100 from the 1500 cards be only playable. Uh, Although I think that there are some cards like the Queen of the Dread Sea that should get some sort of change. In Yu-Gi-Oh, there are some sort of changes. We call them the erratas. They tweak their effects just a bit, so that they cannot allow huge combos, unfair combos that would instantly win you the game, like OTKs, FTKs, and all that stuff. Um, but what I strongly disagree with is
Oh,
when they make
at
a card unplayable.
Zero Fine, you have run out of time.
Down.
All right, now Mr. Aka, your retort, and you can start now.
I'm on the other side of the fence. I hate restrictions. Hate when my fun cards are limited. I dislike when Aria was limited in the limited, even though I understand. And the word unlimited doesn't make much sense with limiting cards. I do like changing cards rather than limiting them. I always thought and believed that it was weird in how Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! They had banned cards or limited cards, because to me it's like I invested money on those cards. I want to play with those cards, right? I built my decks around it. So rather than changing them, they're limiting them or banning them, which it's also understandable because it's a physical card game. It's very hard to change or reprint all the cards over and over and over. It's very expensive. But since we are in a digital format, I think it's very simple and interactive, or it's very easy to reprogram your software to patch the game and add that extra text or remove the extra text or just change the stats. I believe that nerf cycles are very important. They keep the game fresh. They keep your player base happy. They keep your competitive players always trying to find out what's going to break the meta, and finding out what breaks the meta is very satisfying. You keep your competitive players very happy, very satisfied, and at the same time, you keep the casual players interested in the game because they see, oh, maybe what was broken,
Thirty
what I
seconds.
was losing against a lot is going to get changed, going to get nerfed. So now I don't feel as bad losing to the Daria or losing to the tilting at the windmills or losing to queen combos. So I think that this cycle of no nerfs is very stale, very boring, and people are getting kind of sad with it.
All right. I want to say you had touched on like limiting cards. My personal stance on how a card gets limited is I don't particularly like when a card gets limited because to me, so when a card gets limited, it's usually because the card is doing something too strong, right? So when your opponent has only a single copy of this too strong card in their deck, now not only do you feel like, oh, this card is too strong and they drew their too strong card, but now it's they only had one of these. I just got so high rolled.
Yeah.
And it feels bad out of a 40 card deck. Just like, oh, he got his 1 in 40. Whoops. That sucks. So for question number 2, we have, what is your opinion on tournaments with a sideboard in Shadowverse? Zero Fine, you answered first last time, so we're gonna let Akka start this time. So Akka, you can start now.
I am a fan of adding sideboard to Shadowverse. This was an idea that I had like months ago. Even I think it was season 1. I had finished playing a game, and I'm like, I wish I had a way to change my list mid series. It would make it for a more interesting viewer experience, which I am a big viewer of Shadowverse tournaments. I think it would be a very interesting mind game experience for players. I love to build lineups to predict bans, to counter ban. That is my whole play style as a player. That's how I got successful with the game, which is predicting bans, like counter banning, like getting the right matchups in and all that. So allowing us to get a more depth style of building our decks, building our lineups, and allowing us to change mid-game would make it so the polarizing matchups of 80-20 would not be seen constantly over and over and over. Forceful, what we like to call forceful bans. If you play a certain lineup, you always have to ban against that matchup. And I just want to have more in-depth analysis and strategy going into tournaments. And on the other hand, implementing a sideboard style is very hard. I thought about a lot of ideas, and I wasn't quite capable of implementing them. Like, we don't have the software, we don't have the app. I wish side games would allow us to create in-game decks with only like 10 cards, so we can create codes with 10 cards, so we
30
can
seconds.
actually send to moderators on all that. But on the other hand, to conclude, I just think that sideboard is something that enriches the player experience, and I've told some side games employees that we were working on it, and they told me that if you make it work, we will work on it. So
All right. Now, Mr. Zero Fine, your retort. You may start now.
Yeah, I agree 100%. with
Clash.
with Aka's statements. What I like about this format is that I think that what we consider the best decks in general would not be would not be even that good there. Let me give you an example. Let's say you'll choose to play Ginger there. Then you have a sideboard, right? Okay. You will have Ginger is like it's a solid body. You cannot change. It takes specific cards in order to work. Therefore, when you will try putting some other cards in order to counter something, and especially when you will try to counter something, it will be through spells or effects that will not work, where you will probably destroy the neutral synergy of the deck and all this stuff. Therefore, you will turn it into a completely different deck. Therefore, what we would consider tier one and ladder on CVO and stuff, and the set format will not be tier one. And
30
also
seconds.
there are other classes, not classes, archetypes like Mid Shadow, which can adapt to this format. You need card destruction, you need draw power, you need the aggressive style to approach a certain matchup. You have all the tools, and some classes
5
give you
seconds.
the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, I think it seems like we're all on the same page as far as sideboarding goes. To me, I never really understood why, when TCGs moved from physical card games to digital card games, it seemed like sideboarding just stopped as being a thing. And I never really understood that, because I feel like sideboarding allows for more personalization to make your deck feel more like you. Like, oh yeah, I like to tech this one card that nobody else likes to tech, and they never see it coming, and I blow people out with it. And it makes the deck feel, yeah, like I said, it makes it feel more unique. And I think there's also a lot of mind games with the sideboard, because if we're sideboarding, I don't know what you're bringing in. I just know what you have access to, and now we do this little game where maybe he's bringing this in, maybe I should bring this in.
A game inside the game,
Mhm.
which is also very fun, and it also diminishes the effect of rock paper scissors. I know people like that expression a lot in Shadowverse, where rock beats scissors, scissors big papers, all that. Like you could change the matchup completely. You could add a reanimate package to your mid shadow, and now all of a sudden you can't get control combo, or the opposite. You could be comboed. If you're playing reanimate, you could go a lot more aggressive. Also, like I think that when they changed to digital card games, it's because the pool was so small. The pool was so small, sideboarding didn't make sense. But now we hit the standard format, right? The unlimited format. So our card pool is so big that we're allowed to play with all these tools. We just don't have the space to play them.
So let's jump into our last question in the Clash of the Name of Glory. So for this question, it is, will the new cards that have just been released, will they impact the metagame? Now I know that's a very bold question, but I'm gonna let Zero Fine take the lead on this one. So you may go now.
That's a tough question. I mean, there are some cards that are obviously good, like the Dragon Legendary and or the Forest 2 drop. But I believe pretty much, if not all, the the biggest number of the cards are quite interesting. I think that they pretty much set the board for something that is to come. I I can't know what it is, but I really like the Shadow Legendary. It might already be good. I don't know. I haven't tested yet. I didn't have the time. Uh, the Forest Legendary is also interesting. However, I don't know how to damage is relevant for the time being. Maybe in the future the format will have a pace that will allow you to play the same card for 2 consecutive turns, because when you play this card you spend your turn playing this card. Only it's 7 play points. You can follow it up with anything. Uh, that's all. I think I like the Bloodcraft Legendary. I think it's very oppressive when Bloodcraft starts. You
20 seconds.
you're straight up behind when it just hits on 3 play points and the Bloodcraft is going first. Um, but yeah, I think time will tell. I can't know. Card games are practical games. You can
Time.
theory craft.
You're out of time. So now, Mr. Akamaru, you can go and say what you have to say about the topic.
I think that absolutely they will impact the metagame. I've seen it today and tomorrow. I've seen it, today, and we'll see it tomorrow. In terms of ladder, absolutely. Like you could add 2 or 3 cards to your game, and you'll see immediate impact on ladder. I saw a lot of Bloodcraft. I saw a lot of Dragoncraft. I saw a lot of Havencraft playing different decks, like playing Tenko Shrine. I've been playing a lot of Tenko Shrine. That was a card that we never saw being played. Once in a while, it was a meme. Now I played Mirrors with that card. So you add 16 cards to your game, absolutely is going to impact the meta of the ladder. In terms of tournament play, I like that they are giving us 2 weeks to experiment and then refine the decks. If the tournament was this weekend, I don't think it would impact the metagame, just because too much is at stake for you to be testing new stuff or trying new things when the matchups are not clear in your head what your game plan is supposed to be. You either get a good screen partner that's going to play like 100 games with you on that matchup against the top tier decks, or you're just not going to try. You're just going to try something else that is already consistent and refined. But if it's going to change in the future, I think this expansion, and a lot of people believe that this mini expansion is a preparation for what's to come. I mean, I think we'll see a lot more healing effects because some will rotate for Aven. I think we're going to see a lot more
30 seconds.
destroy. I think we're going to see a lot more destroy followers for Dragoncraft. I think we're going to see a lot more support for PDK because it's going to be the last one of the last expansions that she's gonna get to be pushed before she rotates, and I believe that yes, this will impact the metagame eventually.
10 seconds.
Yeah, that's to finish it up. If it's gonna be now, I don't think so. I'm anxious to wait and see what's to come.
All right. So, guys, I'm gonna drop a straw poll in Twitch chat. If you have an opinion on who you think won this Clash in the Name of Glory, just drop your vote, and we will announce that at the end of the podcast. So we're going to move on to this week. We're going to move on to our card of the week. So this week's card of the week is Acceleratium.
What a beautiful sound.
Yeah, if Acceleratium itself doesn't have a sound effect, so I thought it seemed proper to make the sound effect of analyzing artifacts. So I think overall this is a card that's been talked about for quite a while. And I think a lot of people have a similar opinion on it, of it just being really cheap for what it does. We've talked about this like internally, like as a joke, like what's the closest card to Acceleratium in any other card game? And we a little jokingly said the other day, the closest card to it is in Magic the Gathering, at least, is Wrath of God. So
can you tell us what the effect is?
Yeah. Wrath of God is four play points, and then it destroys all the creatures on the field, and then they can't be regenerated.
Does Wrath of God cycle itself?
Wrath of God does not cycle itself. Wrath of God also only works for the one turn you play it.
So
I think the main problem with Acceleratium is the fact that it replenishes play points. Remove that part and it's okay.
Yeah, we touched a bit of this last week. Just allowing you to play 10, 12, 13 play points in a single turn while your opponent is stuck with 6 or 7. It's just such a massive tempo swing. It's value, it's tempo, it's aggressive, it's defensive. It's a one play point card that's just disruptive. Every time you play against it, you know that no matter what you play for the next 3 turns, if you're playing against a good opponent, you're never gonna stick anything for 3 turns. And how do you win the game? Like I think acceleration is more oppressive because in rotation, combo decks do not exist. Like they're not solid, they're not refined. There's nothing that wins outside of board control.
The card to me just does like you guys said, it just does everything. If you have one play point in Acceleratium on the field, you can just go play the 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, 3-1. You have a full board of stuff after you just cleared your opponent's board. And it allows you to do so much for so little resources committed. Just a single card that by itself does nothing.
But let me ask you this. If Deus Ex didn't have the effect of replenishing your play points, you make the same complaints about Acceleratium?
Well, if you have just an Acceleratium on the field, right, it's still pretty strong, even if you have, as long as you have the cards in hand to support it.
I think that Deus Ex is fair. I think that she should be the one giving 1 extra play point because she's a 6 play point. She comes on later in the game. I had games where my opponent accelerations on 3 and then goes like acceleration, analyze with like a biofab and like a Magisteel Lion. I'm like, wait, what? Like acceleration, biofab the analyzing from the meta production. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you playing 3/2 drops on turn 3 and clearing my board with it? Like, come on.
Yeah, or you can even just go, I lost my train of thought, but you can go 2 Acceleratiums at the same time just in the early game if your hand is a little clunky, you're just able to do that. And then all of a sudden it's like turn 4 and you're playing a whole bunch of artifacts and gaining more play points back and going even crazier. It just allows for a lot of stuff. So the reason this card was card of the week is just because we've been seeing Portalcraft do a lot of really strong things lately, and I I think this is probably one of the cards allowing that to happen.
Yeah, it's card of the week because the MVP played this card and this deck to win 2 SVOs and to get third place on the most recent one, only losing to a deck that specifically targeted Portal Craft. So you have an idea how oppressive this deck was. I didn't play Portal Craft until the last weekend. Me and Doolin didn't play Portal Craft until the last weekend. We played it on the last weekend, and all of a sudden, we just make sixth, fourth, and third place on SVO. Like just by adding a single archetype to our lineup. It's not even it's not even fair. I made like 6-1. I could ask 0-5, but I think I was like 6-1 with Portal Craft throughout the entire tournament. Oh, and I lost. I only lost with my other decks basically. If I played 3 Portal Craft decks, I might have won everything. Or yeah.
Hmm?
The class is in a very dominant position at the very least right now. But
I mean,
maybe Mhm.
as new sets get released, maybe the class will evolve. For the time being, it's very restricted to this specific archetype.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's no other way to play it. So might as well boost this archetype.
And
I-
that's another thing. Like, this doesn't give enough design space. Like, why would you play puppets when your puppets could literally gain you play points and draw you cards, right?
You say that it doesn't give design space, but I actually want to give you a counter argument here. So with a card like Acceleradium being as powerful as it is, I think it actually opens up design space for there being more ways to interact with cheap amulets. I feel like the game has always kind of lacked these ways to do it, and it seems like Cygames just has no intention of nerfing this card. It's not. Been perfectly. It's been the way it's been since it came out, and people have been saying it's as strong as it is.
I'm gonna do
Mhm.
what we usually do.
Mhm.
We usually say stuff, and then months later it happens. I'm gonna go out of my way and say, make a card that says destroy artifact that costs 3 or less play points. So we don't destroy the oppressive win the game artifacts, or actually banish. Probably banish is even better. So we can banish like cheaper artifacts without being overpriced. Because nowadays they make artifact removal overpriced because there's cards like Tilting at the Windmills. There's cards like Polyphonic Roar. You don't want to destroy that for cheap, but make it a limitation. Destroy or banish specific artifact that costs
Amulet.
3 or less play point,
I
I
would
mean,
really,
amulets.
I would
and
really like.
attach a body to it, like a 3 play point 2/3 that banishes like a 1 play point artifact when you evolve it or something like that.
One
I
thing
think you
that.
mean
Mhm.
I think you mean amulets.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, amulet. My bad. That's what I meant. Oh, so yeah, artifact was amulet. Thank you.
I always liked playing with like a lot of forests cheaper they're cheaper amulets like Spring Green Protection and Fire Sprite Grove. And one of the issues with those cards, which is probably why they don't get as much play, is just because once they're on the board, they're just taking up board space. So I always thought it'd be neat if you had a way to like destroy your own amulets or your opponent's amulets. So if you're destroying your own amulet, maybe you get some sort of upside, and if you're destroying your opponent's amulet, maybe you get some sort of downside. So like maybe something like a 2 mana 2/2 that's just a 2/2 when you play it. If you're destroying your own thing, it becomes a 3/3, and if you're destroying your opponent's thing, it becomes a 1/1. Something like that. I don't know.
Or if or
And
if
make it
you
cheaper because you don't want to destroy again polyphonic roar for 2 play points. That would be too oppressive or
Mhm.
tilting.
But
maybe if you have a full board, you get the option to replace your amulet with another one. Like you do with the field spells in Yu-Gi-Oh! You can place another field spell up on top of the other, and the other leaves the field. So let's say you have a full board with an amulet, and then you want to play another amulet. So you can remove this amulet and play this without triggering its last words. Let's say if it has any last words effects, just remove it, replace it,
Mhm.
a new
Yeah,
keyword, something. Replace.
banish an amulet and then play it. Yeah.
the the issue with the ways we have to interact with amulets at the moment, we have, to me, the first card that comes to mind is Suttinger. And do you really want to spend 6 mana on a 3/2 to remove an Acceleradium that just wiped your whole board?
No.
Yeah, it's
or brambles that
You,
costs
you,
like
lit-
2.
you literally did it. You literally did nothing.
you
Nothing. You just spent your turn dropping six play points, 3-2 on the board
They
against
can
the
easily
class.
play. They can easily play the second one without losing any tempo. They could just like, I don't know, play a bigger threat, and now you just lost board and value. Like,
No, no, no. Accelerating cannot be countered by the common amulet removal. Only amulets like tilting at windmills and stuff get countered by these cards.
Cygames has showed me that their design philosophy is like the next expansions have answers to the previous threats. So I think the next expansion is gonna have cards like that. That's why I'm throwing this curveball.
So let's move on to one more segment that we can do. Let's go into talking about just some of the new cards that got spoiled, or that they're not spoiled anymore. They're actually just out now. So one of the first cards that I would like to talk about is Green Glen Axeman, just because I really like this card. Um, Anything that I can call a Geno makes me laugh. So that's where I'm at with this card. It's a big Geno. It's comes enhanced. It's a 6/5 for 7. Um, so its effect is give your leader the following effect. At the end of your turn, it does 2 damage to the enemy leader if you played at least 3 cards this turn. So what do you guys think about this card?
This card is very hard to make work with what we have so far. I don't think we necessarily have the tools to make it effective. Someone told me that this is like a dance of death at most because it's gonna kill something big or something small or something median, I guess, and it's gonna do like 2 damage mostly because you don't have the time. If the game goes that long so you can do 4 or 6 damage, that means that you have time to play like jungle wardens, to play elephants, to play all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that most of the turns you will not trigger the effect. There's no consistent way right now to trigger this effect. And to be fair, I don't want my strategy to evolve around this, trying to trigger dealing 2 damage over and over and over. This this needs a huge amount uh, of resources to accomplish. And I don't think there's a way right now in Forestcraft that which
We saw,
generates you fairies over and over and over and over.
we
It
saw this at
is
DreamHack, and I said this should be 5 damage. And they were like, no, that's too strong. And I did the math, like, is it too strong? You're finishing the game on turn 10. That's like D shift level. This is like a combo card, right? So finishing the game at turn 10 is not that bad. This should be like 5 damage. You need 4 turns to finish with 5 damage, anyways.
I think it would have been nice if it was either 3 damage I did, because 5 seems like a lot to me. But
five
either
while also being stackable.
yeah,
Oh, it is
that's
stackable?
it's
Oh,
stackable.
okay.
But
Okay, I didn't know that.
to me, I think just the fact that it's 7 play points. Like if this was a 6 mana 5/4, I feel like it'd be significantly better than it is. But I think the card still might have legs. Like as we go into next expansion, we're gonna lose Aaron and we're gonna lose Jungle Warden, and those are some of the heavy cards that Forest plays. So maybe we'll see space for this card. It's a fun card. I enjoyed the little bits of games that I got to play the card and have the effect online. For most of the time, it only did 4 damage. They would just concede after it was about to do the 2 damage, or they would just kill me before I had a chance to do anything with it. So, are there any of the cards? Which of these cards would you like to talk about next? We have quite a few options. You can go with Spartacus. This card seems like a lot of people liked this card. A lot of people in the community really enjoyed this card. Spartacus is a 6 mana 4/5, and it's got Fanfare. Transform the Reaper card at the bottom of your deck into a victory card. And then at the end of your turn, put 2 random officer followers from your deck into your hand.
I think that having different ways to win the game is always interesting and exciting. I flipped off on like DreamHack. I like got so excited. I ran to all the guys like win new ways to win the game, new ways, new ways. Everyone got excited to see it. If it works or not, I don't care. I don't care if it works. It doesn't have to work. It just give me different ways to win the game. That's what I want.
To me, this card is kind of like a Swordcraft Deus Ex Machina. Same stat line, and then it doesn't draw you 5 cards, or does Deus draw you 5 or 6? One of those two. And this instead just gives you 2 cards, which is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that's the only relevant thing about this card.
You don't seem like you're nearly as high on the card as a lot of the other communities you'll find.
I think it's a fun card, and that's it.
Yeah, I think that's about where I'm at with the card at the moment too. I think a card like this would need a lot more support for it to actually do something. I know a lot of people are saying like, "Oh yeah, just slap a Chronos in your deck and play this." I don't know if that's quite the way to go about doing this.
Kronos also demands high attack followers, and you don't have any.
Also gives your opponent their win conditions.
Yeah, I would love to to have Spartacus pull me my Hero of Antiquity after I played my Chronos.
Okay,
That would be cool.
I played a lot of PTP, and I can tell you right now, I want to build a deck like this, but it's not going to work because there's two main things missing. First is controlling the board. Second is healing. If you want to make the game last until turn 14 or 15, you absolutely need healing because you go out of Evos, you have no way to control trades, and there's always going to be chip damage. You need healing and you need ways to control the board, which Sword doesn't have. That's how PTP Forest work. That's how it got effective, was because Will of the Forest and Lion, Fairy Lion, or whatever the name was, existed and made it consistent.
So let's go to another card that quite a few people seem to like this one a lot. So this one is White Frost Dragon Feline. Now this is the Dragon Legendary. Yeah, Zerofine seems to be a big fan of this. This card's nuts. This card just does, it feels like it does everything to me. So it's a 2 mana 1/3, and I think I've been pretty vocal about this. I really like that stat line. I think it's a sticky stat line. It's hard to deal with, and another thing that I like about the stat line is it just slows down the overall game speed, as opposed to a 2/2. You need to get hit 20 times with this for it to end the game, as opposed to a 2/2. Only 10 hits will end the game. So I think that's a nice way to make Shadowverse games as a whole last longer as we push this stat line. So when you play this card, it adds a White Frost Whisper to your hand, and White Frost Whisper is select an enemy follower and destroy it if it's already damaged. And if it hasn't been damaged, deal 1 damage. So it's either an execution or it's an angelic snipe. So it's very flexible. And then when you evolve it, it gets a half evolve, so it gets +1/+1, not +2/+2. But it pings something. It pings an enemy follower. So it sets up for you to use the White Frost Whisper.
Too much stuff on a 2-drop. Too much stuff. I think, of course, this card screams, I am the bane of fairies. On turn 4, I can kill 3 fairies alone.
Yeah, and then you can just throw in a Blazing Breath too, because why not?
Yeah, which is also interesting is that you don't need to play the spell immediately. You can just hold it. Just that pressure on your opponent. The next big thing you play, I can just Blazing Breath and kill it. That alone is just so threatening when you play. If you play anything like Ginger, if you play anything like I don't know, if you play a mid-range style like Neutral Forest has been popping up a bit today, you always have the pressure of I can just spend cheap, like very few play points to deal with your things.
It destroys Beauty and the Beast. If this card ever
Exactly.
becomes relevant again.
It was that exact moment. Like the pressure. This is like, what? How do I win the game now? Well, how do I play my win condition when you just have 2 play points deal with Beauty and the Beast?
Yeah, and most of the times Beauty and the Beast would evolve over something, therefore it would get damaged and crack.
So I want to talk about another card I can English. It's called Waltz, King of the Wolves. This is the blood legendary. Now, this was a card that when this thing first got spoiled, it got a lot of flack for not being very good. What are your guys' first impressions of this card? I have not played this card, and I haven't seen it played against me yet, so I have no opinion on the card at the moment.
You can, let me tell you something that was funny. You can play aggressive, right? And you can evolve going first. That happened to me. I got blown because my opponent played 1, 2, 3. On turn 4, he played Goblin Blood Moon, evolved going first because the Prince of Wolves evolves. And let me tell you, then it was just like Dark General, Razor Claw, Vania. Like I had to play defensive hold the entire game. They didn't even need a Belphegor, and they just had Vengeance activated in an aggressive deck. So I think it's strong. It's stronger than people thought it was.
I have to agree.
To me, when I looked at this card, my first impressions of it was this. I don't think this is going to be a bad card. And so from what it sounds like you guys are saying, it seems like a pretty reasonable one so far.
I think it's a good addition to Blood. They needed something to push it.
So another card that also got quite a bit of flack when this expansion came out was Arcus, Ghostly Manager. This is the Shadowcraft legendary. A lot of people just said this card wasn't going to help Shadow. And I read this card and I thought this is 7 mana, turn every card in your deck into Phantom Howl.
To me, that would be good. To me, that would be extra good. Making me play Cerberus. Like, okay, bear in mind, you have Hector, right? You can have 3/1s for like almost no cost. You play a 2-drop, you play Hector on 9. That's 6 damage. That's it. That's like a mini Aisha on turn 9, right? You play Demon Eater, you draw 2 cards, maybe you're Hector, and then you have 2 ghosts and the Nectar and Cerberus spells. Like the only problem with this card, and that's the way to balance it, is that it's very expensive for do nothing. It's one of those do nothing turn and then explode.
It's also
Imagine a situation.
Mhm.
Imagine situations where you're on top deck, right? You have no cards on the board, but you have the Arcus effect active, right? And your opponent, let's say, about 8, but you have nothing, literally nothing. And you have 7 shadows, where Aisha doesn't kill. And you draw Pure Hearted Singer, and you play Pure Hearted Singer. It transforms to the ghost, you draw 2 cards, and if one of these cards is Hector, you win.
Yes.
To me, this card
Exactly.
is like the closest thing Shadow is going to get to Acceleratium.
If only gain play points. Because, yeah, Singer just becomes stronger. Demon Eaters become really interesting. Bone Chimeras are very interesting too. They're like 3/1/1s and 2 skeletons. Like, to me, that's interesting. I think it's very powerful. If we see some support, it's gonna take the Hector's rule. Hector's about to rotate, right? I think it's the next expansion.
Yeah,
Shouldn't it be? Tempest,
we only have
Tempest of the
one more
Gods.
month with Ektar.
So this is like, we taking you Hector. Maybe this is okay.
So that's all the cards from the mini expansion I wanted to talk about today. Are there any other ones you guys want to talk about before we move on? No? All right, so I think we can start wrapping up. We've been going on for over an hour. Today's episode went a little bit longer than we were planning. So I want to thank Zero Fine for coming on and being on the podcast with us. It's a pleasure having you on. And same
Pleasure's mine. The pleasure's mine.
And Akamaru, I want to thank you as always for being such a great co-host. And
Thank you.
Switch Chat, you guys are awesome. Keep doing what you're doing.
What's
You
the voting?
Oh,
I want
yeah.
to see if I'm 3-3 against Zero Fine or 2-4. That's all I want.
I just let them do an overall who won. So Akamaru, you got 4 votes. Zero, you got none.
Yes. The people had spoken. I am victorious. Yes.
Never mind.
So maybe next time, Zero, you can come up with. I believe in you. I believe you can win a clash in the name of glory. So we're gonna call this a day. You guys have any shout outs you want to say before we wrap this up?
Right. Shout out
Not
to Zerofine for making MVP once again. That's crazy. Like twice MVP twice, and hopefully he wins. Shout outs to Dolan. We haven't mentioned him too much, but he made it to top 8. The first big event that he had on Shadowverse, and is nailing it so far. And shout outs to Cezero for putting all the work, for making yet again another amazing, insane Shadowcast. He had a lot to do. And thank you all guys for watching and making this worthwhile. We spend our time for you, and you spend your time with us. Thank you so much.
I want to just give a shout out to how nicely you worded that whole statement, Aka.
Thank you.
All right,
It
guys.
was cute.
We'll be back with another Shadowcast in 2 weeks, and I'm excited to see you guys again. I'm excited. Enjoy yourselves, guys. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.